Nice class, we focused on the Torah portion, Lech, the pivotal commandment of circumcision, and how that relates to us as people and us as parents, specifically selfless, being selfless parents and teaching our children to be selfless. We are trying to do this thing called living with the times. That living with the times is really living with the Torah portion. Of course, we want to live with it, so we want to look at the Torah portion and see, well, how does this help me in my life? What do I gain from this, or how can I apply this? So the climax of this, well, first of all, as starters, this week's Torah portion is Lech Lecha. The climax of this week's Torah portion, the end, the conclusion, is God commanding Avraham at age 99 to circumcise him. At this point, Avraham already kept all the commandments. He'd been doing that since he was about 3, except this mitzvah. 612 he kept, one way or another, but not this one. He was waiting for God's command. For this mitzvah, he needed God to command him, because he knew he needed this as the transfer, as the bridge to change something. What was spiritual, what was physical, and there was no point of connection between the two. The Avos, our forefathers, did everything and didn't change the world at all. Me, very small spiritually, but everything I do, every mitzvah you do, changes the physical and changes the spiritual. So Avram didn't do that, Yitzchak didn't do that, Yaakov didn't do that, and all of us do that. So what's the bridge from our very holy forefathers who were so remote from the physical and their commandments couldn't change the physical at all, and us who are spiritually small, but spiritually powerful in a way they weren't? The bridge from them to us is the circumcision, is the mitzvah of Mila, is the only mitzvah God commanded Avram to do. Everything else, he was a volunteer, like the Peace Corps. Everything else, he was doing on his own, which is great, which is amazing, but it doesn't have the power of God's command. Everything we do, God's commanding us. We are commanded. That's the only reason we're doing it. But as commanded people, we have a lot of power, and we can make changes that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov couldn't make. But in one way, Abraham made a change, and then Yitzchak and Yaakov after him, only in the bris milah. So someone just asked, why the bris milah? Great question. That means you're thinking along good lines. Hold it, we'll get to it. But again, why was it possible with a bris milah? Because God commanded Abraham. Because then it's not Abraham's powers, it's God. Just like when God commands us to do something and we do it, what we're doing is much bigger than us. Because I'm doing God's command. It's almost like, and this is for everything I do, for everything we do. Imagine an amazingly wonderful, wise, brilliant, luminous, person, and me. Simple, no relationship between the two of us. But then that amazingly wise and brilliant and wonderful person has a little something that I can do for him. And he asked me to do something. Suddenly I exist. Suddenly I'm significant to him. Suddenly there's a bond between the two of us. That's a mitzvah. Every time God commands us, he creates an opportunity that I'm meaningful to him, that I can do something for him, that there's a relationship between us, that I exist in his world. And therefore I exist because his world is the ultimate world. So when God commanded Abraham to do the Milah, this was now happening in a way. Yeah, he's a volunteer. He's wonderful. Volunteerism is wonderful. Choosing to, but you don't have to, is wonderful. But when God commands, now it's real. Now God's saying, I need you. Now God's saying, you exist. There's something you can do for me. And therefore, this is God's powers. And that smashed the barriers. Because until then, there was a physical, there was a spiritual, and I said the two could not meet. There were barriers between them. With this commandment, the barriers got smashed for this commandment because something changed. In the physical world, a limb of Avram's body, the coarsest limb in his body, becomes God. So God needed something. He needed some mitzvah to be the bridge between the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, when they're very holy and detached and spiritual service that in no way affected the physical, and us, and our ability to actually make change. Because obviously that's the point. Ultimately, the point isn't to be holy and detached. The point is to make change. And we needed the Avos to pave the way for us, like they paved the way for us and everything else. So we needed the Avos in some way to be connecting to the physical, to be interfacing, to be changing it, which we do all the time, and they never did. And God chose the mitzvah of Mila to be that bridge, to be that one and only action the Avos ever did. And it's not like after Abraham did it, now it opened up and everything Yitzchak did, everything. No, also Yaakov, also Yitzchak. Only only in the Mila were they touching the physical, were they changing the physical, nothing else in their life. Why did Hashem pick that as a mitzvah? To literally make a change in the physical. And then to connect all of the service of the Avos to us. So we say, my Labanim, what our forefathers did affects us. Because of this one bridge between us and them, this very narrow bridge. Only the mitzvah of Mila. But through the mitzvah of Mila, it transfers all the energy of everything they did to us. So why did Hashem pick this one? Why specifically? Well, Mila is unique. The bris, the circumcision is unique because we're not taking food or a coin or an article of clothing. It's the only mitzvah we're taking ourselves. We're taking physical flesh, human flesh, physical body. And that's the substance of the mitzvah. That becomes holy. That becomes godly. Now, through this mitzvah, obviously, we're lessening the coarseness, the intensity of the physical drive of that body part. And so you just see Judaism. It's not like, Catholicism, like, oh, no, that's not nice. Judaism says, we're making it holy. We're taking this organ, we're taking this most physical act, and this is going to be the sign that we're God's people. In this organ specifically, that's where God has his sign. That shows we're his people. That shows we're a Jew. This shows the power of godliness. We can go to the lowest element and make it the highest. If we can take that organ of the body and make it godly, we can take anything and make it godly. Yeah.
So why do only the men get a sign, whereas the women don't get one?
Excellent question. It says in the Gemara, in Talmud of Licha, that every woman is born naturally. It says a woman is considered as naturally with the circumcision. So everything spiritual about the circumcision applies to every single woman de facto, without a physical operation.
Yeah, we get it during childbirth. Come on, is that enough for you?
No. I think it's the coolest thing that nothing was. I mean, the Arabs actually do that, as you probably know.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yes, nothing is cut from a woman's body. And all the spirituality of a bris milah you have by birth. Why? Because women are naturally very spiritually sensitive. And I assume every man admits or doesn't admit, but they probably all know it. Women are spiritually different than men. We know. We're women. We're spiritually different. We're already gemalit. That's the term for it. We're already post-circumcision by birth. Shira?
Turin, you said that it's less intense once these men have the circumcision. What about like Goyim who don't have it on? Do they have a stronger desire and a bigger drive for that?
Yes, they do.
Really?
Yes. Or a Jewish man who doesn't have a circumcision.
Really?
Yeah.
So they have it really? Oh, wow.
It's a much that's actually, I mean, in the world today, I mean, we're not saying it from a health, hygiene, science, cancer perspective. But obviously in the world today, they understand that for a man's health and, to be protected, a man should have a circumcision, right? That's why in the hospital, they offer it. Why do they circumcise babies in the hospital? Not because they're trying to follow Moses's laws, but because they understand that this is necessary to protect from, a certain cancer that could happen otherwise. And the people that don't do it, which of course in America, it's very normal to be done. But in other countries and cultures or in previous times when they didn't do it, it was because of lessening that drive and not wanting to. And that's why they didn't do it. So definitely it does. Definitely it does. And again, the fact that nowadays the world recognizes that it's actually very necessary from a health perspective has nothing to do with why we have a bris milah. But when you're serving God, it works on every level. So it makes sense that also on the physical level, this is good. But that's not why we do it at all. But yes, the fact that it lessens the physical drive, yes, that is, because we're told that otherwise men would be so even more ruled and controlled by that. And this helps them get a grip. This helps them, not be controlled by their physical passions, but rather be the master of them.
Wait, having a bris helps the man get a grip, is what you're saying?
Yeah, not be as ruled by his physical passion.
It lessens his sex drive.
Exactly.
That's the talking code. You're welcome. I think that's what I figured out.
Yeah, it does.
Thanks for clarifying.
It does. And that's not an accident. Meaning it's not like, oh, and it does that too. Weird. No, it's deliberately helping a man by making it easier to be godly in this area and not just be animalistic. You know, of course, as women, we can think of men as being animalistic anyway, but it's imagined without a bris milah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now we wanted to connect this. So Yael said, well, what about us? Well, and I said, well, the Talmud says every woman is already gemalit. Every woman already is considered with all the spiritual benefits of circumcision. I wanted to focus on that a little, its spirituality, and also, of course, as we said, to see a very strong lesson I felt for us as parents, and for our parenting, for both. Because beyond the physical drives and passions and lessening them, there's an overarching message in the circumcision, which is that we are born with a very high level of self-preservation, being self-centered, the world being about me. Every baby is intrinsically very selfish. Every baby puts itself and its needs ahead of everyone, right? When you hear a newborn screaming, it's like, I remember very clearly my oldest, who's in her 30s, and I was on some call with the gas company or something like that. And my daughter was crying in the background. And I remember the woman saying, oh, that's a newborn cry. And I'm thinking, how does she know what's a newborn cry? Well, after having a few babies, you know, that high pitch, like emergency, 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 right? She's giving you this message, or he's giving you this message, emergency, this is about me and I have a need, and now all the world has to stop because I have a need, right? That's what that cry does to us, because that's the nature of a human. And a baby, of course, it's cute, it's adorable, it's wonderful. But then that baby becomes a demanding toddler, who then becomes a selfish child, who then becomes a self-absorbed adult. So right away, we have the work of purification, of refinement with the bris. The message of the bris milah, the message of circumcision is put something in front of yourself. Sacrifice, removing the foreskin, which, as we just explained, diminishes the pleasure of intercourse. Sacrificing that pleasure and saying that serving God is more important than that self-gratification. This is a huge piece on two levels: to being a parent and to parenting. So as parents, we, selfish, self-absorbed adults, have to become selfless. If parenting is a selfish act, it's not fair for your kids. Doesn't work. It's not gonna be what your child needs. And of course, we all know that. Parenting is an act that forces us to leave our self-centered reality. Because most of us, when we were single, we probably were, if we were typical and normal, almost completely self-absorbed. So what does God do? He gets us married. To be married happily, to be married successfully, to stay married, you can't make it as a self-absorbed, entitled person, viewing your spouse as this like convenient, auxiliary for you. It doesn't work. You have to step to yourself. You have to be there for someone else. You have to be there for him. You have to put him in front of you. And if you don't put him in front of you, it's not going to work. So that helped. Marriage definitely helps lessen that me world that we've had since we were children. But even though we're less self-absorbed enough to be married, we could still be very full of ourselves and be married. So to really change, to really get us out of this self-centeredness, which again is what this bris is symbolizing, God hopefully made or will make every one of us parents. Because children are not about you. You have to put yourself aside and focus on them. Their needs, what's best for them, not what's convenient for you, not what image you want to project. It's a very hard lesson, and often we fall on our face many times before we get it. Has anyone seen that journey in themselves and how they've grown in awareness of this? That it's not about me, and if I think it's about me, it's not going to work. It's got to be about my child. It's got to be about his needs, her needs, what's best for them, not what I want, but what's good for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have like two sets of kids. I have like my little kids and I have my teenagers. So I think having definitely with my teenagers, you know, just be more forgiving, pick your fights, really just like focus on, like you said, like what they need, and it's not about me. And just really listening to them, because, you know, it's making sure that I'm always going to be the one they come back to, and not like someone out there or like one of their friends and give them bad advice. So yeah, for sure. Definitely see it.
It's like a humbling experience.
For sure.
Very
Yeah.
humbling.
No, it
I
really
can't
is.
think of anything more humbling than raising children.
It really is.
And I keep getting humbled. You know, you think I have enough and I've done it for enough years, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You say you have 2 sets of children. My children say how like almost like every few kids, it's like they're raised in a completely different house.
Yeah.
Parents, tired parents, different situations. And I see, and I don't want to scare anyone. And anyone can feel free to disagree with me. And maybe that's just my experience and a few of people I know. But I feel like as I continued having children, my children got more and more challenging. I don't know if anyone else has enough children to like look at it with that perspective and has seen that. And you don't have to. It doesn't have to. I don't want to scare anyone. It doesn't have to be true. But I've definitely seen that with myself.
Yeah. Well, also they like, you know, they're saying like it's all a generation thing. Like the older the kids get, the different the generation that they're growing up in. So that's why they're so different.
Absolutely. The world of my
So
12-year-old was not
definitely.
the world of my 30-year-old was 12. Absolutely. It could
Yep.
be that. I was thinking more spiritually. Maybe it's just that God is like, oh, you're so much more skilled. You're on such a better spiritual level than you were 20 years ago. I couldn't have given you this kid then. Now you can handle it. But I don't know
I
if
like
that's
that
true or
too.
just
I
in
like
my
that too.
brain. And I don't know if anyone else who has a number of children has seen that pattern, but I definitely feel that. So Ma'ayan said, yeah, she's experienced it. I think we all hopefully have. If you haven't, very good to reassess yourself and to really say, have I absorbed the spiritual message of the bris? Am I parenting for them and not for me, for God and not for me, for the benefit of this child and not for me? Until I get to that point, there's always going to be something lacking in my parenting. There's always going to be some need that the kid's feeling they're not getting, because even if they can't articulate it, they know it's about you. It's not about them. And to really be there for your child, and as Ma'ayan said, to be the person your child's going to come to, it's got to be about them. It can't be about you. So that's like 50% of the equation. 50% of this aspect of the bris, the selflessness of the bris, for us as parents to really be circumcised. As we said, women are born circumcised, to really be selfless as a parent. Then there's the other 50% of the equation. The other half of the equation is, what message am I giving my child? What message is my child getting from me directly and from me by absorbing the truth of my reality? Are they getting this message that they're not going to be what they could be if they're stuck in their self? That the first godly act is the circumcision, is saying, put God before yourself, is saying, don't be stuck in yourself, is saying, the more you're stuck in yourself, the more you're blocked from happiness. The more you can focus on others, on giving joy instead of taking, on Hashem, on putting God in your life and in other people's lives, the more you, my child, will feel good on the inside. Have you seen this? Have you seen this in your education of your children? Have you tried to give them this message? Have you seen that they've absorbed it? The world gives them the very opposite message. The entire world is giving a message of I. It's not only because we have iPhones and I this and I that. It's not an accident that that's the name for all of the gizmos that everybody wants. That's the culture. That was always the world. And in our world, 21st century America, it's aggrandized like never before. It's on a pedestal. It's like, this is how you raise a healthy, successful person. This is how you raise someone who's going to make it in the world. And Torah says, no. We start with circumcision. we start with a bris. We start by educating the child before they're old enough to understand, to put themselves on the side. So any success or failure stories in this direction. We're open to success stories, we're open to failure stories. Failure stories are a different version of success stories in this direction, in trying to help your children, not have to wait till they're married and have kids to learn these lessons. Very often I think of all the things that I know now make a successful wife and want to educate my children to get that, not have to wait till they're married. And similarly, to be a successful parent, why wait till they're parents to learn this lesson? Let's give it to them now. So anyone has tried, anyone has succeeded or failed in giving their child this message?
So I'm gonna, sorry. I think that like one of my daughters does it very well. But I think also she sees it in one of her friends, and like she tries to be very selfless and like very understanding. And she's always there for her when her friend needs to talk. And but it comes down to the point for her, like now, like after like a year, like her friend is still in the same place, like she still comes to her and she still complains to her, like talks, and she tries to be selfless and tries to be there for her. But like she comes up to me, she's like, it's not fair, mommy, like what about me? Like I want to tell her about my problems and I want to tell her what's bothering me, but like all she ever talks about is like what's wrong with her. But like I always make sure that I make her feel good. And so like I tell her, like it's so amazing that you could do that for her. Like she really only comes to you because you give that to her. And I could see how frustrating it is for you to not have that friendship back with her. So like she plays that role very well, but like she gets frustrated when her friend doesn't give it back to her.
I don't think it's wrong teaching her about boundaries. I don't think it's wrong teaching her even about emotional vampires, so to speak.
Right.
I don't think it's wrong giving the child that message, because that's, again, as an adult, you want her to be empathetic, selfless, and healthy.
Right.
You don't want her to be drained and a schmata and a dish rag, because in her relationship she gives and fails, so not fed. I think that the message I would want myself to have, and I would want my children to have, is giving is a wonderful way to feed yourself. You feel so good when you give. So if you're giving and you don't feel good, I would question what's wrong somewhere in the dynamics, which your daughter is telling you very clearly what's wrong. She feels it's a one-way relationship, and you can't for a year be giving. You sort of feel like, wait, this isn't a relationship. This is just about me being her sounding board.
Right.
So it's not like what you're doing is wonderful, but maybe here with this friend, maybe she has really deeper needs than you can deal with. Maybe her needs require someone that has more skills than a friend. And you can still be there for her, but it's good to put some boundaries on the relationship. And that's not being bad. That's being a good friend. It's giving her the message that maybe she needs someone else, somebody more skilled, somebody more experienced who can help her.
Right.
Because I think for ourselves as adults also, I'm sure we all have experienced that. I've definitely experienced that, where I have given in a way that wasn't healthy. It was too much. It was wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people here have gone through that, because we hopefully have been trained that it's so good to be selfless. It's so good to be there for someone else. You want to be there for someone else. And then as adults, we sort of say, maybe this isn't what they mean. Maybe it's not to be exactly in this fashion, but it's still wonderful. I think it's wonderful that your daughter's already like growing in this place, instead of, like I'm saying, finding out when she's 25 or 30 that she needs to work on this. So I think that's wonderful. Anyone else has had experiences with their children in this direction? What you've tried to teach them, what they've come to on their own? Well, if you can't think of something, maybe you haven't frontally tried to teach your child, but I can guarantee you that how you are in this area is exactly what you're teaching your child. In this and in everything else in life. Much, much more than what we're trying to frontally teach them is who we are. And that's what they absorb, no matter what we say. And obviously, if we speak to them all day long about being respectful, and then they hear us bashing the rabbi and bashing the administration and bashing our boss and bashing their principal and bashing their teacher, well, obviously there's what we say and there's what we are. And lo and behold, what they're going to absorb. So it's true in this as well. Some of us are not very good at frontally having these discussions and talking, and we don't really know what to say, or there's never an opportunity, or they never seem interested. Oh, ma, roll their eyes. But what we are is going to teach them in this and everything else. And if you really want your child to be a giver and to be other-centered, to be circumcised, to be selfless, the best instruction is our example, and our joyful, positive example. Meaning, maybe you could think of your own mothers and things that they were really good at, but they really weren't happy about. Maybe your mother made an excellent Pesach and she was so drained and exhausted and resentful. So you absorb that Pesach is hard and stressful, and let's go to Florida. Maybe your mother always had loads of guests and complained before and after. So you absorb that it's not a lot of fun. But when your mother, father, but really primarily mother, when she was doing whatever those beautiful Jewish things that she was doing, and she did it with joy and she was happy. And when you put the other people in front of yourself and you're happy and it feeds you and you share your happiness, that's what they get. Anyone that ring any bells in terms of your thinking of yourself as a child?
100%.
Yes.
100%. Everything you're saying. Whatever you do, I see as my kids get older, they're doing things that I want them to do, and it's exactly me. Like when they're little, like they roll their eyes up and like, yeah, mom, that's stupid. That's not cool. Whatever. Why do you do that? But like, as like they get more mature, I'm starting to see like, similar things that I want them to do. And I guess I get a little nachas there.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that it's interesting because I think when kids are a certain age, they're programmed to roll their eyes. That's just being normal. But even as they're rolling their eyes, they're absorbing. And then when they grow past needing to roll their eyes, it comes out.
Mine still roll their eyes and they're adults.
They roll their eyes and they're adults.
They still roll their eyes and they're adults.
Well, you think they're adults. In America today, you could be in your 20s and early 30s and still be a child. So I don't think adults are rolling their eyes. And you know what? Even when they're rolling their eyes, they're absorbing. Again, it's just knee-jerk how society is training these children in adult bodies to behave. But seriously, I know all my children tell me of certain things, each one different things, but certain things they've picked up almost like it or not. And I'm sure we can look at ourselves and see the same thing with our parents. Hopefully.
I have an example.